What's the greatest common denominator between those contractors using this method successfully?
Oh, they educate their consumer. The pre-adjustment conference, about 2 hours before the adjuster shows up, is the most important thing that I teach, arguably. Because what that does is it educates the consumer so they actually know what the heck's going on before the adjuster shows up. It sets expectations with the consumer, because if you aren't setting the expectations, the adjuster will, right?
Absolutely.
And now the consumer is on their own side. They take up for themselves. They don't let the insurance adjuster just, run over them like a steamroller.
I'm Mr. Jones.
Mm-hmm.
You're the contractor.
Mm-hmm.
The way I interpret my policy is my roof, gutters, fence damaged by hail and wind.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, I should owe my deductible, which is my responsibility, and in exchange for that, I should receive a 5-star roof put on in a 5-star method with a 5-star warranty and 5-star aftercare service. Do I, Mr. Jones, policyholder, am I being unreasonable to expect that from my insurance carrier?
Well, let me ask you a question, Mr. Jones. When you bought your property policy, did you bargain for substandard construction?
Absolutely not.
You didn't bargain for that.
No.
All right? So if the insurance company tries to force substandard construction down your throat, are you going to accept that?
No.
So what are you going to do about it?
I'm going to tell the insurance carrier that I trust you and that I like your way of doing business and that your estimate and your layout of what it's going to take to restore my property is what I trust and is what I expect them to honor.
But the adjuster is going to come back and say, I know hundreds of contractors that will do it for our price.
Right. Well, I don't trust hundreds of other contractors. Hundreds of other contractors show up and knock on my door with license plates from Minnesota, Nebraska, Missouri. I live in Texas.
So the
I want a
question is-
Texas contractor.
So the question is, do what for your price? See, they're trying to make the issue about price. They don't even know they're doing this. They're taught by these executives who know exactly what they're doing. It's a mind trick.
Right.
The issue isn't price. The issue is scope. The issue is we have 65 line items, and every single one of them is legitimate and reasonable, and they have 35. They're leaving off a bunch. It's substandard construction practices. They're not including in their scope a whole bunch of work that has to be done if the work is to be done at construction best practices. It has to be done. Otherwise, the client is getting substandard construction, and that's not what they bargained for. And Mr. Jones, we agreed that that isn't what you want. That's why you're hiring us, because if you'd wanted substandard construction practices, you'd have to hire someone else, because we don't do that to people.
Right.
Man, that's a very powerful sentence. In fact, that's a close. We don't do that to people, which presumes there's a lot of people out there that will. Of course there are. So, Mr. Jones, let me ask you a question. What do you want? A contractor who's loyal to the insurance company that does substandard construction, or do you want someone who's loyal to you that's going to do work to construction best practices? What say you, Mr. Jones?
Loyal to me. Still be in business in 10 years if I have a roof leak. Able to service any questions I have years down the line. That's what I want.
Cool. So guess what? We're one of the most expensive contractors in town, and you'd be crazy not to hire us. Would you like to know why?
Yes.
See, that's called a hook.
Yeah.
The consumers, they got all these things going on in their mind. You know, their wife is talking about divorcing them. Their job isn't going well. Their business isn't going well. Their kid's on cocaine, whatever.
Yeah.
They have all these things going on, life, right? And you want them to put all of that on hold, stop thinking about their life, and think about roof for a second. That's a difficult thing for them to do.
For sure.
Most people in sales don't think about these sorts of things, right? So you have to have a hook like that so that they go, well, wait a second, what'd you say? I'd be crazy not to hire one of the most expensive contractors in town. Okay, you have my
Why?
attention.
Yeah.
Why would I be crazy not to hire you? And so then you have to be able to give an answer. I mean, now you've given the hook. You definitely have their undivided attention. So now you have to be able to explain why they'd be crazy.
I think the difficulty with lump sum, especially contractors trying to wrap their minds around it, is the fact that they don't know their numbers. They don't know what their labor, their material, their true overhead, and then what their true profit.
So they're not even
be.
persuaded themselves.
Right.
How can they persuade the consumer and the insurance company if they're not even persuaded?
Right. So I'm the client, Mr. Jones, and in February, when we had the freeze, I had ice dam damage all over my house, right? You're the contractor, and you're coming in saying, hey, that was a 100-year storm, but who knows? We need to take preventative measures. We need ice and water on all the rakes and eaves, valleys, pipes, rise walls. That sounds great to me. I'm the client. That's what I want. That's what I expect. You're the contractor. Your estimate to me says, hey, I'm going to take your entire roof off down to the deck, replace any bad decking. We're going to wrap you with ice and water all the way around the perimeter. Make sure you're good to go if there's another ice storm. However, we both know that the carriers hit back at that is, oh, we don't pay for that in Texas, right?
There is a line across the United States where ice and water shield isn't required by code. Above that line, they have to do it. Code compliance is built into the limits of liability for which the consumer has paid premium. It's built in. They don't have to have L&O, law and ordinance coverage. It's built in. I posted about that yesterday on Level the Playing Field. I showed exactly. In fact, I showed two different compelling sources that prove that law and ordinance compliance, code compliance is built in to the premium without having to have law and ordinance coverage.
Even the weird Allstate policies.
Yep, all of them.
Don't include
all of them.
code.
They all include that.
Yeah.
You know why that is?
Why is
so
that?
when you build a house, doesn't have to comply to code.
Yeah.
So if the house burns down, doesn't the builder have to comply to code?
Yes.
So guess what? The cost to build the house is $200,000. Guess what's included in the $200,000? Code compliance.
Right.
So if you have $200,000 in coverage, guess what's built into the coverage? Code compliance.
Right.
Guess what else is built in? 3% for architect fees. Who's charging that?
Yeah.
I'm going to have an upcoming strategy about architects.
Architects,
that I'm
engineers.
going to be talking about
Yeah.
very soon. So just keep on watching Level
Yeah.
the Playing Field. I'm
Right on.
I'm about to reveal something that's going to really put the ball in our court.
The breakdown with the lump sum and the reason why maybe a lot of bigger contractors don't want to use it, right? Is it, correct me if I'm wrong.
Then don't.
Well, right.
Then don't.
Well, for sure. But I want to get as many reps in here selling for me as possible. And our turnover rate's high. We don't have time to train a rep to have a pre-adjustment meeting and be able to
Then you
speak
need to
with
hire
any
a trainer.
authority. Well,
Then you
true.
need to hire a trainer.
For sure. But don't you think that's the reason why some of the old guard is just sticking with the exact method instead of going this lump sum value method?
Sure. Then they can enjoy the insurance companies nitpick their estimate to death. So now that they're having to do substandard construction, or the consumer's having to come out of pocket for the difference, or take it on the chin and go with the cheap guy.
Yeah.
Who will do substandard construction because he doesn't give a rip about Mr. Jones. He doesn't give a rip about them. He cares about collecting that check.
Right.
And so only about 10, maybe 15% of the contractors out there do construction best practices. You know this. You inspect properties. You see it. You see substandard construction every day.
Yeah.
Maybe 15% do construction best practices. That's what you tell the consumer. Say, Mrs. Jones, what would you prefer? Substandard construction or construction best practices? Well, guess what? I have a secret to tell you. And you lean across the table and you whisper, it's the same price.
It costs your deductible.
Your deductible.
Yeah, right.
So if you can get construction best practices or substandard construction for the same price, which would you prefer, Mrs. Jones?
Best practices, please, Steve Patrick.
Now she's going to say, there's got to be a catch. And you're right. There is a catch. You are absolutely correct. There's a catch. And here's the catch. The catch is the insurance companies are so used to paying for substandard construction, it doesn't occur to the adjuster that the consumer has paid for construction best practices. So the adjuster has to be educated towards what the consumer has purchased with their premium dollar, number one. Number two, the consumer has to decide, and you can tell the contractor can tell the consumer this. It's going to take about an hour of your time making the insurance companies fulfill their promises to you. You notice I didn't say an hour of your time to maximize your claim. See, when we use phrases like maximize your claim, it sounds like we're trying to milk the insurance company.
Yes.
So what we say is it's going to take about an hour of your time to make the insurance companies fulfill their promises to you, Mrs. Jones. And isn't that what you want, Mrs. Jones?
Hold their feet to the fire.
Isn't that what you want, Mrs. Jones?
Yes, it is.
To have the insurance company fulfill their promises to you? I mean, I know you want us to fulfill our promises to you. Don't you want the insurance company to fulfill their promises to you?
Right, yes.
So is it worth one solitary hour of your time to get construction best practices?
Yes, it is.
5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. I'll help you with what to say. It has to be in your words because I'm not a lawyer and I can't, represent you. But I can help. I can educate you. I can educate you all day long.
Absolutely.
If you're willing to make the investment of about an hour of your time, give or take, make the insurance companies fulfill their promises to you, then we have a deal.
Yeah.
We'll give you construction best practices.
I'll sign on
Now,
that.
there's a close.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, that's a close,
Mm-hmm.
and they get to decide. Now, guess what they've just committed to? Standing up for themselves, and you're not having to be the one
Right.
trying to persuade the insurance company.
I'm just the contractor.
That's right. They just made the commitment that they're going to step into the breach and actually do their job and make the insurance company fulfill their promises to them. Boom. See, that's one of the biggest problems is that contractors think that they're supposed to be the ones, and it's the consumer standing up for themselves.
Right.
And when you word things that way, the consumer goes, oh, wow, that makes sense. Of course it does. You just have to learn how to explain things in a compelling, cogent manner so the consumer understands and grasps the situation they find themselves in. And then you just have to simply educate them step by step what the process so they understand.
So in summary, lump sum method, contractor needs to know all your pricing. You need to know how much material costs, how much your labor is, how much your actual overhead, how much your actual profit needs.
You know what? My son created a
Yeah.
spreadsheet called a lump sum calculator that these contractors can get. You know how long once you set it up, it takes about 30 minutes to set it up with your name and your logo and your overhead and your sales commissions and all those sorts of things. Those are things that don't change. The things that don't change from job to job to job. All right, once you set up all those things, it takes about 30 minutes to do that maybe, depending on how quick you are. You know how long it takes to create an estimate using the lump sum calculator?
What about 10 minutes?
5.
5?
5 minutes. That's right. 5 minutes. And you have your number.
Where can
Your lump sum price.
Where can contractors get their hands on that?
They can contact my son. My son is not a 20-year-old son. It's a 40-year-old son.
Yeah.
He has 10 years experience as an adjuster.
Right.
Right? He's way smarter than me. Adam. Well, he is. Yeah. And so his number is 469-235-3133.
And he writes estimates too
Yeah.
as well.
He runs Estimates Made Easy. Mm-hmm. And he writes hands down by far the best Xactimate estimates in the entire industry.
So back to our summary, contractor needs to know their pricing. As important, if not more important, is that relationship between the contractor and the homeowner. I, as the contractor, am going to educate you so you know.
Correct.
And you, as the homeowner, are going to make a commitment to stand up for yourself, to hold the carrier's feet to the fire,
mm-hmm.
and obligate them to
fulfill their promises to the consumer.
Yes.
Imagine that.
Right.
Them actually abiding by the terms and conditions of the policy and fulfilling their promises.
In the interchange.
Indemnify the insured.
And we've already covered this, but to paraphrase, who's got the most power in
the consumer?
In that triangle.
The consumer does.
Yeah.
They just don't realize they do.
Right.
The consumer does. They're in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Because they have a contract.